Happy Sunday, everyone. Welcome to Our Issues Birmingham. It's that time of year again. Yes, in Alabama, football is king. Our guests, Ryan Brown, Lance Taylor, The Next Round, the sports talk show of the state of Alabama and beyond. Welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, Counselor.
Do you like that intro?
That was an amazing intro, Tom.
Yeah, right off the cuff.
You know,
I
and
We-
so we used to do radio way back in the day.
Me and you?
Well, yeah.
I
we
did.
that
Yeah,
too,
you did.
I
You were
was-
on with me too.
I was trash on the table for
were?
seven years,
That's right. And you were our go-to guy anytime a player got arrested,
which is often.
which is often. It happens more often than you would think. Yeah.
Yes, I know we're taping ahead of time, but it happened
It
today.
happened today. Yeah. Yeah.
So what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, our new venture is almost a year old. Yeah, coming
I
up on a year.
remember.
Yeah, this month.
And it's doing well.
Very well. Thank you for asking. Next round live. If people want to go see everything we do.
Okay.
.com. Nextroundlive.com.
So you just finished media days. What'd you take away, aside from the fact that Jimbo Fisher has not yet figured out there are synonyms for the word despicable?
Jimbo walked it back. He said, I got no problem with Nick Saban. It's like brothers fighting. Brothers fight, things like that. So Jimbo walked it back a little bit. I don't think he wants to necessarily pick a battle with Nick Saban. I mean, they got to play each other every year, and Saban's had the upper hand by and large, other than that one game last year.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of as much as things have changed in the conference, they remain the same because Georgia and Alabama are just huge favorites again this year. And people just expect. I know are you about to pull back on your Auburn Tigers here?
I was about to say, I saw that we were ranked, the Auburn Tigers, that is, dead last in our division.
Well, it's not a ranking; it's just a pick.
Well, and
so, it could be wrong.
The easiest thing in the SEC is to pick who's going to win the West, which is Alabama. The most difficult thing is to pick who's going to come in seventh in the SEC West, because really you could take, I guess you could take six. I don't know if
I don't know if you can make an argument for A&M, but I could probably make a good argument to you for everybody other than Alabama and A&M finishing last in the West. Somebody had to be picked there, and Auburn was, but I could convince you it could be Arkansas, it could be Ole Miss, it could be Mississippi State, it could be LSU, it could be Auburn. I could convince you of any of those, I think.
So there's parity.
Well,
At the bottom.
Yeah.
Not at the top.
Parity at the bottom.
Yeah. It's still clear cut at the top.
I would go even money that Alabama and Georgia will meet up again in the SEC championship game. It seems that likely.
Wow. So, of course, Brian Harsin took a bit of a hit in the offseason, and he's trying to come back, and everybody feels like he's going to have a positive season. Do you feel that way?
Positive, I think they can take a step in the right direction, yeah. It's an extremely tough schedule. I mean, if people haven't looked at the schedule, Auburn opens with 5 home games, which is going to tell you the simple math. They're going to play a lot of road games in the conference at the end. Penn State comes in, who, that's a team that beat Auburn last year. They play LSU in that first stretch. So I think that first 5 games is going to tell you a lot about Auburn and Brian Harsin. If they can be 5-0 coming out of that stretch, you got a chance to have a positive year, I think.
Look, it's a manageable schedule in the front end. September is going to be key, but if you come out of that stretch 3-2,
bad news.
It could end up being one of those 5-7 seasons. And from what I've heard, is as much as Harsin pushed back at SEC media days, and I appreciated that. I thought it was nice to see him come out on the defensive and firing, but a 5-7 would get him run.
Mm-hmm. He better not go to Mexico again. Is that what you're telling me?
that's
We might have problems.
Spit, Tommy. That's where he went.
Don't spit on me. I'm just the host.
Yeah.
I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, he was in Mexico when all of that went down. And I give him credit for that, too. He didn't cut his vacation short. He's just like, this is my vacation. I'm staying here. Y'all can fire me if you want to fire me.
I would think his vacation was not nearly as relaxing.
No.
So, but I know I'm talking about Auburn a good bit right now, but we're going to shift the focus to what most people out there want to hear about, I would suspect. But he lost so many players to the portal. Mm-hmm. How does that happen?
Well, he kept the key one, though, in Tank Bigsby. There was some thought that Tank Bigsby, who could be the best running back in the Southeastern Conference, was going to get in the portal and look to go elsewhere, and Auburn kind of recruited him back in. And that's huge because he's your best offensive player, maybe the best player on the whole team. So keeping him, I thought was absolutely massive. And, you say the portal, the starting quarterback potentially. As you know, as we tape this, I would say Zach Calzada is the favorite to do that.
I would think so too. You know, you're talking about in the rest that went down today. TJ Finley was another one of those guys in the mix. A guy that started games last year, started games for LSU 2 years ago, ultimately transferred to Auburn. So, as much as they lost, if Calzada can pan out and play like he did against Alabama last year, then Brian Harsin has a quarterback.
Yeah. So the portal, takes and gives, and in the situation for Auburn, I think giving Zach Calzada, that's your potential starting quarterback. I mean, if you get a starting quarterback out of the portal, you say probably it's a net gain for you, assuming Calzada plays well. And like Lance said, we've seen him play well and we've seen him play bad. We saw him play great against Alabama, and he pulled the upset, but the rest of his career has been a little shaky.
Well, I know I was recently in Colorado Springs, and I got in an Uber, and the first thing out of that guy's mouth after he found out where I was from was to talk to me about the transition from Boise State to the Southeastern Conference and the difference in not just the player that you're dealing with, but the competition level
Oh, no
as
doubt.
well.
Yeah, and recruiting. Yeah, I think the recruiting has been a little tough too. I mean, it's tougher to recruit against the SEC coaches than it is at Boise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Boise in the Mountain West was that alpha program, and now you come in and you take over Auburn, and I mean, the reality of the situation is that's a middle of the pack SEC program right now.
Well, we're going to talk about what everyone wants to hear about. That is the University of Alabama when we come back from break. So don't go away. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham, talking with sports gurus, I might add. Lance Taylor and Ryan Brown, also good friends, so I can say things like that. Enough about Auburn. Let's talk about Alabama. As usual, toppermost to the poppermost. Is that true?
I haven't heard it put that way.
Nick Saban came
That's
out
what
this
the
month.
Beatles said about
okay.
themselves.
I mean, I would assume there's a lot of people that believe this could maybe be Alabama, at least defensively, one of Nick Saban's best teams. And Nick Saban said earlier this month, last year he thought was a rebuilding year. And you've got the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, you win the SEC, you play for the national championship. So if that's a rebuilding year, yeah, I think we're going to see much of the same with Alabama. I think it's going to be a dominant team that's going to be favored in all 12 regular season games by double digits.
How's their schedule?
I mean, it's probably about as favorable as you're going to get as an SEC West team. As Lance said, they're going to be a favorite, maybe a double-digit favorite in all those games. The big non-conference game is at Texas, but this is year 2 for Sarkisian, Steve Sarkisian, who, was
Toodled under Saban.
Yeah, he did. He was, a Saban disciple, and wasn't a great year for them last year. So, you would certainly favor them to win in Austin. But, when you look at the conference schedule, pretty manageable. The interesting stretch for them, they play Texas A&M, who beat them last year. That's going to be a big revenge game. It's in Tuscaloosa, but the very next week they go to Tennessee, who could be kind of a resurgent SEC team this year. I think Tennessee can have a good team. And I know Lance particularly, and I think a lot of people think that's a little bit of a tricky situation, playing A&M, all the emotional to go on around that, and then you go to Knoxville the very next Saturday.
Yeah, we saw a similar, last year at SEC Media Days, everybody was talking about Ole Miss, Alabama, because Ole Miss played Alabama so tightly before, and it was Lane Kiffin, and this was going to be the one that Alabama circled, and Alabama goes out and they blow out Ole Miss. Very next week, they go to College Station and lose to Texas A&M. Well, now everybody's talking about October 8th with Jimbo Fisher coming into Tuscaloosa. So Alabama will be ultra hyped for that game. I could just see them run A&M out of the stadium. Very next week, go to Knoxville, play a good Tennessee team that averaged almost 40 points per game last year. It's a tricky game.
Mm-hmm. Well, oddly enough, I know Alabama doesn't need to sell tickets, but I think the Jimbo Fisher dialogue directed at Nick Saban certainly sent the ticket prices even higher.
Yeah, I would think it's one of the more expensive tickets. Ohio State, Michigan probably, and I would think a top 5 ticket right now on the market would be A&M at Alabama.
Yeah, it's going to be prime time, CBS. When you see CBS, they get to pick the week that they want the primetime game, because it's just normally a 2:30 kick. And once a year, they get a primetime kick, a 7 o'clock kick. And when you see them reserve that weekend, even though they don't initially say it's going to be Alabama, Texas A&M, they reserve that weekend, you know they're thinking the same thing too, Tommy, that it's going to get a lot of eyeballs nationally because of what Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher said back and forth.
Does he have an Achilles heel?
Who?
Mr. Saban.
Are you talking about this year?
Yeah.
You know, it used to be the mobile quarterback. That used to be his Achilles heel, but it doesn't seem like that really trips him up as much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say, and we didn't.
You mean the lack of a mobile?
No. The teams that used to beat Alabama were the elite. And I shouldn't have said a mobile. It's really got to be pretty much an elite mobile quarterback, a Johnny Manziel type. Used to be the one that would really be his Achilles heel.
Yeah, and an internal Achilles heel possibly this year could be wide receiver. Now you got two transfers in Jermaine Burton, who was good at Georgia. I don't want to say he was great, but he was good. Tyler Harrell, a kid that played at Louisville that they say is an absolute burner, had a pretty solid season for Louisville. So those are guys that there's a lot of expected from. And you've got young receivers who probably didn't play up to expectation last year.
Yeah. Other than just Corey Brooks, maybe. JoJo Earl got injured.
You're so used to seeing Alabama since Julio Jones have at least one elite wide receiver. And, you know, as good as John Mechie was, Jamison Williams, the transfer from Ohio State, was even better. I don't think anybody saw that coming. So you're wondering if you've got another situation like that at wide receiver. But right now it's kind of unproven.
Can somebody get him the ball? Bryce?
I'd say he's pretty good.
Yeah.
Your Heisman Trophy winner from last year. And,
well, details.
Yeah, maybe an overall number one pick in the NFL too. So I would say Bryce Young, you're fine at quarterback, and they're going to be good at running back too. Jahmyr Gibbs is one of those transfer portal guys. We talked about it at Auburn. Alabama did very well in the transfer portal. Lance just mentioned two receivers. Their top two receivers came out of the portal. Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back, was at Georgia Tech last year, and there are a lot of people that think skill set wise he might be the best running back in America.
Is he like so many Alabama running backs, like Derrick Henry? I see him as upright running backs that are big and strong and fast.
Yeah, I don't think he's more. I think he's less in the mold of Derrick Henry and Najee Harris. And I've seen him compare Daniel Jeremiah, who's a former NFL scout that works for the NFL Network, comes on our show a lot. And he compared him more to like Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints, that type of running back. Dalvin Cook, that type of running back with the Minnesota Vikings.
Very elusive, a ton of speed, great hands out of the backfield. I mean, he will be a guy, you know, unlike Brian Robinson. I forgot how many receptions Brian Robinson had, a handful maybe last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, a totally different back than you've seen before.
So aside from Alabama and Auburn, what about the others? Do we have Texas and Oklahoma now, or is that?
It's not. It looks like that. Well, that's up in the air. I mean, it looks like 2024, 2025 for that. So they're not quite in the conference just yet.
Yeah, we've heard some Texas, you know, big hitters are saying let's get SEC ready before we go to the SEC. And Texas isn't close to being SEC ready. We saw it last year with Arkansas whipping Texas. You'll see it again with Alabama whipping Texas this year. So I think they want to hold out till 2024.
Well, I know one way they are SEC ready, and I'm going to talk about it in our next segment, and that is NIL. I think Texas has more money than Alabama in terms of alumni that want to pony up, shall we say.
You pump it in your gas tank every time you go there. You pump that money in your gas tank.
Which has changed the entire landscape of college football, at least to me. I'm not saying it's bad, because there's a lot of money generated by these guys out on the field, and I'm okay with them participating. Some feel otherwise, but we're going to talk about that whole NIL thing when we come back from break, okay?
All right.
This is Our Issues Birmingham. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. We've been talking about Alabama and Auburn football primarily in the SEC. Something new has happened. since, well, it happened last year, but not to the extent it's beginning to surface. And that is NIL stands for name, image, and likeness. So what, in your opinion, has that done to college football pre-NIL, post-NIL?
I mean, I think it's changed the recruiting game a little bit. I don't think you're going to see, I think the same people that dominated in recruiting before, your Alabamas, your Georgias, your Ohio States, they're still going to dominate. But I think it has opened the door maybe for some other ones to come in and find ways to get players. Basically, the way it's changed recruiting is I can go to a player for Lance or a high school player, and I can say, hey, look, man, we've got this fund of $30 million. We'll get you all kinds of endorsements. Come here and make a couple $1 million while you're in college. Why would you not want to do that? And that's going to open his eyes maybe to a school that he wouldn't normally consider.
Yeah, and some of those schools we're hearing, some are really structured and organized, other schools aren't. Everybody's still trying to figure this out because this is a space nobody's operated in. As you said, it just started last year, but Miami's an example. They've got one huge booster that is just spending a ton of money. So Miami's having a lot of success recruiting. The guy that owns Dan Gilbert Rocket Mortgage is a big Michigan State guy. So he's funding the collective there. So Michigan State and Mel Tucker, they're doing really well with theirs right now. So you'll see some fringe teams that will get better because of this. But I agree with Ryan that the majority of the have-beens will continue to dominate.
Yeah, that was the funny thing is everybody, when it first started, everybody said, well, this is just going to make the big time schools with the big budgets dominate recruiting. Well, they already do. I mean, I don't think it's going to change any of that.
That's true.
You can still only sign so many players, no matter how much money you're throwing around.
But there's still so many unknowns with this.
Yeah.
And there's no guardrails, and there's no limitations. I mean, we heard of the kid that's going to Tennessee.
Nico Imaleva.
Yeah. I mean, is it $7 million?
Those are the reports. There were $7 million. The reports that Arch Manning was going to get $10 million to go to Texas. I mean,
These are 17-year-olds.
Yeah, and those are just reports, frankly. But I mean, still, there's money to be had there.
Yeah, and we did find out that there's a certain SEC quarterback that already has, going into the 2022 season, $2 million in endorsements.
Yeah.
So you use the expression collective.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
Well, we're
different
still
in
trying to
every
figure it
school.
out. Yeah, it's. Do you remember when we went through? I think it was the early 2000s, and everybody had a mortgage company. You basically get a license and operate out of your garage. I think people are doing that with collectives right now. Everybody wants to get in on this piece of the pie.
So how would you define collective?
It's a group of like-minded people that have pooled their money to pay the players or the recruits. Now the problem
And that's okay.
Yeah, by rule. Now you're not supposed to recruit. You're not supposed to recruit by, like, if you're a player, I'm not supposed to go to you and say, if you come here, I'll give you $10 million. But now if I say, Tommy, why don't you talk to my friend Lance? And Lance, he's just a member of the collective, now maybe that's the way around it. The collective is just a like-minded group of people that pool their money for paying the athletes. The problem is, and this is kind of what Lance was getting to, you got a lot of alphas in these groups, and this group wants to do it one way, this group, so some schools it's a little disorganized. You got 2 or 3 or 4 different collectives. Some, it's very streamlined where there's one and they've got a common goal and they're all pushing in the same direction.
Yeah, and I would think this is going to be the transition year where the kinks really get worked out, and then collectives are really established going into 2023.
Well, how do you get the Bryce Young NIL with a guy like me who's brought on and is the kicker sometimes? I mean, how do you
don't.
Doesn't that create a rift there?
Well, I mean, it's just like in the NFL. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is making $40 million. Mason Crosby, the kicker there, he's making good money because he's a veteran, but he's probably still only making $3 or $4 million. I mean, I guess you just got to know your role, and Bryce Young is a guy that won a Heisman Trophy. But another answer to that is CAA out of LA, they handle Bryce Young.
Right.
Local guys are handling these other guys.
But I think too, it's just it's the way the world works. I mean, Tommy.
What's CAA?
Creative artists.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a
People
huge
that,
agency.
that represent Ben Affleck and Brad Pitt.
But they've also got a sports arm like Jimmy Sexton that represents not most, but represents a ton of coaches in college football. He's with CAA as well. So they've got a sports arm that represents guys like Bryce Young and some other NFL players.
Yeah, I interrupted you.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's like any office space. I mean, any company has a CEO. He's going to make more than the vice president of sales, who's going to make more than the marketing director, who's going to make more than the administrative assistant. So, I just think it's the way the world works, and I know it's different than the way college football has worked in the past, but it's mirroring what we all do in our real life.
Well, it was represented to me that some of the things that a collective could bring to the table was an ability to compensate maybe those second-tier players from the collective funds versus the Bryce Youngs of the world who have the big money chasing them.
Yeah, I've heard of, and I don't know if you've heard this, I've heard there are certain schools where these athletes are going to be able to make whatever they can make, the good ones, the brand name guys. The other guys, we want to make sure we give them a minimum of $20,000 each, or whatever that number is.
And how does a place like Jackson State compete with that? They don't.
I mean, it's going to be tougher on the smaller schools, there's no doubt. I mean, if you don't have some guy that randomly went to your school that ends up being the CEO of Amazon, I mean, it is going to be tough, but they've just got to lean on their boosters to cough up what they can cough up.
Well, give me your top 5 finishers going into this season that you think will be in the championship bowl. I guess that's top 4.
Top 4 in the college football playoff. Right now, I would say my college football playoff would be Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia.
I would go Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and Utah.
Well, that's
Utah.
Like yeah,
I like the Utes. Closed strong last year, 10 wins. Cam Rising back at quarterback. They played toe-to-toe with Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. The schedule is really, they've got Florida week 1 in Gainesville. They get past Florida, I think they're going to be undefeated when they host USC, and I've got a feeling that Utah can run the table this year.
Well, you heard it here first. Thanks for being with us, guys. This is Our Issues Birmingham. We'll see you next week.
When I first saw a turtle, my heart was full. Now I'm anything but lonely.
We had this deep connection, this heart connection.
He just wants to be close to you and part of your life.
Every day with Turtle is a perfect day.
When I'm holding her, it makes me feel calmer.
I think everything he does shows how much he loves us.
When we adopt a shelter pet,
We discover
they're a little bit of a lot of things.
But they're all pure love.
I think it's just vapor and flavors. It won't hurt my kid like cigarettes.